suspect. This is the United States Coast Guard. Skipper, stop your vessel.
The Coast Guard's history, 200 years in almost all the oceans of the world.
Coast Guard as a multi-mission dynamic organization that has to change, constantly change, in order to meet the demands of the American public.
As you go through cases and you go through training and drills, this is your Coast Guard family, and it's amazing, the teamwork. That's what holds us together. These aren't just my crew members or my associates, these are my brothers.
We have so much to do and so much responsibility, and the public, while they may not know they do, looks to us to do a lot of things. But we have a lot on our plate, a lot.
Semper Paratus, always ready, and we are.
Thank you for the important work you do. God bless you all, and God bless the United States Coast Guard.
I want to thank the mayor of this city and the officials of this great state for honoring us and for this place being the birthplace of the United States Coast Guard 199 years ago today, and this being the day of our first day of our 200th year. Thank you very much, Skipper.
Throughout 1990, the United States Coast Guard celebrates its 200th anniversary. 200 years of saving lives, preventing accidents, protecting our coastlines and waterways, fighting drug wars, cleaning pollution and oil spills, and providing hope to those hurt or lost at sea. Today's Coast Guard is a multi-missioned organization resulting from the merger of 5 federal agencies through the years. Initial credit belongs to Alexander Hamilton, dating back to 1790, when he urged Congress to fund the construction of 10 revenue cutters. The premise behind the revenue cutter service was to stop smuggling, battle piracy on the high seas, and collect tariffs due the United States Treasury.
The government depended upon import taxes for most of its revenue. There was no such thing as a federal income tax. So if Americans did not pay their import tax, the government literally had no money to operate with. And our purpose was to guarantee the taxes were paid. That's why we were created.
Meanwhile, the United States Lighthouse Service was born and provided a beacon of hope to the maritime industry. These architectural wonders lent a guiding hand to fishermen and merchants struggling at sea, saving countless lives over the past 2 decades. One decorated lighthouse keeper, Ida Lewis, is said to have saved at least 18 lives from her lighthouse station on the coast of Rhode Island. Her heroism is still celebrated each year in the stylish New England port city of Newport, Rhode Island, on Ida Lewis Day. The Revenue Cutter Service also assisted in national defense efforts, fighting in every war since 1797. The United States Coast Guard, as we know it today, has landed a vessel in every amphibious battle the United States has encountered. In 1848, the federal government formed 3 new services: the U.S. Steamboat Inspection, the Bureau of Navigation, and the U.S. Life-Saving Services to help deal with an onslaught of boiler explosions and maritime accidents. Thus, there were 5 separate services dealing with maritime safety: the Revenue Cutter Service, the Lighthouse Service, the Steamboat Inspection Service, and the Bureau of Navigation, and the Life-Saving Service. In 1915, the Revenue Cutter and Life-Saving Services combined to form the United States Coast Guard. The Coast Guard played vital roles in both World War I and World War II, and merged with other maritime services during World War II to form today's multi-talented Coast Guard. Today, the United States Coast Guard forms the world's 12th largest multi-mission Navy, and on an average day saves 16 lives, works 23 oil and hazardous chemical spills, investigates 17 marine casualties, and seizes 3,568 pounds of marijuana and 35 pounds of cocaine. Its mission continues to expand.
And today we are really a truly multi-mission service. I think if you could really divide our missions into 3 areas. Military preparedness, which we do, maritime safety, and maritime law enforcement. And of course, law enforcement was our first duty. Coast Guard is a mirror image of the desires of the American public. We are the people that carry out America's maritime policy. We had our officers camp out on islands to prevent seals from being slaughtered. And the jobs and the tasks of the Coast Guard just go on and on and on.
The Coast Guard has the same mission today that it did 200 years ago, and that's to carry out the will and desire of the people of the United States.
Lighthouses are America's pyramids. We've reached a point when the same technology that built these towers has made the lighthouse keeper unnecessary. I hope every member of the Coast Guard will continue the light keeper's tradition of vigilance and devotion to duty. And I think the town of Cape Elizabeth will continue to treasure this wonderful house and the tower. I want every lighthouse lover to leave here with the assurance that the Coast Guard is committed to preserving America's lighthouses. That's our job as much as saving lives, enforcing our laws, or protecting our coastline.
We are privileged to be Americans, to be citizens of the most open, the most free, the most prosperous, and the most just society in all of human history. These magnificent structures remind us of our heritage and of our obligation to extend that heritage to those who will follow us. I'm pleased to have been able to play some small part in that effort, and I thank you very much for having me here today. Thank you.
The Coast Guard of the 90s, we're going to get more and more into our defense missions. Already our ships are scheduled to carry missiles. We're flying AWACS aircraft against the drug smugglers, a very complicated aircraft. We're flying intercept aircraft with F-16 intercept radars against the drug smugglers. We've got to develop more technology and oil spill cleanup. We're going to be in the 90s a product of technology and advancement, and it's going to be a different, more streamlined, more technical Coast Guard than you see now.
The Coast Guard continues growing with the times. Computers, advanced weaponry, life-saving environmental protection, firefighting, law enforcement, and marine safety are all elements of its everyday mission. Together with today's volunteer Coast Guard auxiliary, Coast Guard men and women face a daily challenge to provide a maritime safety net ensure military readiness, and enforce federal laws, both at home and abroad.
I'm sure that most of the public have no idea of all the different missions that we do. And we have an important military role, an important drug enforcement role, and just a whole host of things which we do. And there are only about 38,000 to 39,000 of us, which is smaller than a lot of municipal police departments. And we're all over the world with navigation safety, with buoys, with lighthouses, with radio aids navigation, like LORAN. A lot of these things all come together. I think of them as marine safety items.
Oh, it's no 9-to-5 job. In fact, you know, there'll be 100-hour weeks. There'll be weeks that it's just incredible. And also, if you add in the sea conditions that we work in sometimes, you know, a 24-hour day can be like a 72-hour day just because of the wear and tear on muscles that you never use, just trying to hold on, keep your blood pressure down.
Search and rescue is obviously going to take precedence over our law enforcement mission. There is another boat out there now, but that would not preclude us from having to go. It's likely during this week of law enforcement patrol, which is what we're on now, it's very likely that we're going to be called out on 2 or 3 cases. So what we do is we maintain ourselves in a good geographic position to respond to the bulk of the search and rescue cases that may come up. And in the meantime, while we're waiting, we conduct fisheries boardings and law enforcement boardings primarily.
Checking all safety equipment, life jackets, survival suits. I think we should have a belt, flares, fire extinguishers, no oil in the bilges, things like that. Make sure his documentation's all in order, things like that.
The duties change in that the mission changes. When we're on a patrol like this, right now, our primary job is law enforcement, but if search and rescue comes up, we respond. When we're on search and rescue standby, our only mission is search and rescue, so we're in a heightened readiness status and ready to roll all the time.
As part of the Marine Safety Program, the Coast Guard has established a Marine Safety Information System with the acronym MSIS. This system attaches all of the Coast Guard officers involved with marine safety and assists the Coast Guard in tracking all of the vessels, commercial vessels that we interface with, whether they be marine inspection activities, pollution prevention activities, port safety boarding activities. All of that activity will be captured in this nationwide system.
As we enter the 90s, environmental concerns are becoming worldwide issues. Since the Alaskan oil spill and the Rhode Island World Prodigy spill grabbed national headlines, the Coast Guard has been at the forefront of environmental protection.
Major job we're doing in the Valdez oil spill and in the oil spill in Newport, Rhode Island. The Coast Guard has the same mission today that it did 200 years ago.
The vessel called the local Coast Guard station at Castle Hill in Rhode Island, and they alerted the Marine Safety Office in Providence. The response time was almost immediate. This vessel grounded at Brenton Reef close by Castle Hill station, so within minutes the first Coast Guard vessels reached the scene of the spill itself. We then went for 48 hours non-stop with the cleanup and with monitoring the vessel. We hired barges to take cargo off the ship. We finally, before it was over, offloaded the entire vessel of all of its cargo and managed to stabilize the ship in its condition within about 24 hours after the spill.
I was at home when I got the call, and Saturday morning when I arrived at Fort Adams, which was the staging point for the cleanup, there were numerous trucks, hundreds of people, boats, ready to go to work. We recall everybody, assign them to certain duties, and once everybody's been assigned, that's monitoring around the clock until the event is done.
We had a contractor on scene as well as Coast Guard and state people, and all this equipment was brought on scene to help clean up. We had no birds killed, we had a minimal fish kill, and although it's a highly toxic oil, I'm sure we had a fairly significant damage with the larval stages of life. We had no real evidence of death that we could see on scene. There's no more traces of the oil, the beaches are clean, and I think the lingering effects now will be political primarily and looking to prevent future spills of this kind in the future.
Now by that time, this 10 million gallon spill had spread into a slick that was 1,000 feet wide and 5 miles long and growing right under your eyes. You could see it growing. Now, 7,000 feet of boom, it doesn't take a very good arithmetic to figure out that won't go around a spill that's 5 miles long and 1,000 yards wide and expanding by the second. There wasn't enough equipment. But it's hard to visualize any place in the world, Puget Sound, San Francisco Bay, New York Harbor, Baltimore Harbor, etc., that would be able to bring to a spill 30 miles from the closest town equipment that would be any more significant than what we had here. And of course, that's a very powerful tool when I say to whoever that I'm representing the President of the United States, and I would like you to do something, whatever it is, for the Federal Unseen Coordinator. Things seem to get done very quickly. In Valdez, we had the most massive spill this country has ever known. And our pre-designated on-scene coordinator in this port is a commander, United States Coast Guard. We very quickly found that the commander was not a senior enough officer to handle that kind of a national disaster. Yeah, there's some problems in this. A 1,000-gallon spill, a 5,000-gallon spill, a commander is just fine for it. But when you have the disaster of the century, you know, if your plan only has a commander in charge, you're certainly going to end up shifting around that plan and putting somebody else in.
I'll do that for the money, you pay the rent. I know I've done you wrong. We met that pretty evening, you put me out with nothing but a lie to it come. Well, you know I'm too late. I'll be rattleshake. The baby, won't you please come?
The event that just overwhelms me as far as drama and excitement was the rescue of the 500 passengers and crew from the cruise ship Prinsendam in the Gulf of Alaska. This happened in 1980. The cruise ship caught fire in the middle of the night. People abandoned ship, and Coast Guard helicopters, assisted by Canadian and one Air Force helicopter, rescued all 500 people without a single serious injury or loss of life. 200 miles from land, everything operating at its extreme maximum range, experiencing the operational failures that normally happen during any type of operation. And yet, if this had been scenarioed by Hollywood, it couldn't have been any better.
Oil spill and hazardous chemical cleanup, firefighting, life-saving, search and rescue, accident prevention, navigational inspection, drug law enforcement, coastal patrol, lighthouse maintenance, national defense. The duties of the Coast Guard go on and on. The United States Coast Guard and its 40,000 men and women are truly charged with an exciting yet hazardous mission. For 200 years, they've lived by the order, you have to go out, but you don't have to come back.
Rescues of 200 years ago, and I say to myself, this is the same service. Maybe the hardware is new and the hardware is different, but the rescue, the desire and the dedication to rescue is the same.
Danger is an everyday occurrence, and still the men and women of the Coast Guard are always prepared, always ready to answer the call.
The Coast Guard's there 365 days of the year, 24 hours a day, and we've got to go out in the worst weather possible, not in the best weather possible. Our services aren't needed when the weather is good. And I think that's the thing. But I think Americans do appreciate the Coast Guard.
Semper Paratus, always ready. And we are.
Always ready.
Semper Paratus, always ready.
Always ready, Semper Paratus.
Always ready to go.
Semper Paratus, always ready.
Semper Paratus, always ready.
You two must be tired.
Maybe I'll take 5.
The men and women of the Coast Guard are the most important thing we have. Their spirit, their desire their professionalism. That's what makes up the Coast Guard. So you can add the technology to it, but it's the men and women that make it happen.
What a great pleasure it is to join you in marking the 200th anniversary of the Coast Guard. Created just a few years after the birth of our Constitution, the Coast Guard and its distinguished corps has earned a special place in the nautical history of America. In 2 centuries of bravery, determination, and sacrifice, who can count the number of Americans lost and abandoned on the high seas that the Coast Guard has safely returned to port? And who knows for sure how many accidents your instruction courses and inspections have prevented? What we do know is that the Coast Guard ensign waving atop a cutter, plowing through the turmoil of hurricane seas, or stenciled on a helicopter, flying a reconnaissance mission along a rugged coastline, is a sign of safety, a beacon of hope. And today's Coast Guard has an even greater mission. I want especially to thank you for tracking and intercepting drug traffickers off our coasts. It's dangerous work, but absolutely vital to our national health and our security. While the Coast Guard's founding fathers didn't foresee the drug problem, you've answered your country's call for help loud and clear. But that's just like the Coast Guard, always prepared, always willing to answer a call for help. Thank you for the important work you do. God bless you all, and God bless the United States Coast Guard.